Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to make a downdraft gasification stove, and it burns cleaner and puts off less CO2. And I'm going to show you two options, one that can be used indoors and one that can be used outdoors, where it'll be safe indoors, and the outdoor version has a little bit more smoke and CO2, so you don't have to worry quite so much outdoors. But indoors, I'll show you how to do this. It's really simple to build. You just need a few parts and pieces, and I'm going to link everything down below. So if you want to build this for yourself, it's a great thing to set in the pantry, forget about it until you need it, and then it becomes extremely important for heat, for a little bit of light, and especially for cooking in an emergency situation. Now, the two main components of this gas stove is a larger exterior can and an interior can, and that's what's going to create this secondary burn. It's going to draw in more oxygen, and it's going to help eliminate a lot of the CO2 and make it a lot safer. So anyways, these empty unused paint cans you can purchase for just a few dollars at local hardware stores. The most important thing is you're going to need the lid, and that's the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have this to fit inside of there. But there's one really important thing to do, because this is not going to sit on the bottom. This is going to sit right at the surface of this lid, so I'll show you how to do that. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can do it with tin snips, you could do it with a saw, but I think one of the easiest ways to do it is going to be with this hole saw. So we want one that is slightly smaller than the diameter of our inner can. So just remember, you need about a 1/4 to 1/2 inch gap between the two. So just remember, you don't want one the same size as your inner can. This is not going to work if that's the case. So just remember, you can see that pretty easy. There's a little bit of a gap all the way around our hole saw. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark the top of our paint can dead center and try to get it as close as we can, and then start working on cutting out that inner circle. Now, I've attached our lid to our paint can with a hammer. Did a little bit of denting there, but it's not going to hurt it at all. So we want this just dead center as we can get it, and then we're going to mark it with a magic marker all the way around to make sure we're drilling out the hole saw as close to the center as possible. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to make sure that this hole saw, there's a gap, because we're going to do something with the outer edge of this metal, and I'll show you that in just a second. All right, so I always recommend anytime you're dealing with these metal edges, make sure you wear a really thick pair of leather gloves. It's really going to save you if you have an accident. So you may rip your glove, but it'll keep you out of the emergency room. Now, one of the things I've discovered when you're cutting through metal like this with a hole saw, these are really designed for wood. They're not really designed for metal, but that's okay because it makes a really nice round hole. If you're using a pair of tin snips, you're not going to get this perfect round hole like this. We're a little bit off center, that's okay. But what I was going to say is just, again, make sure that you have a really thick pair of leather gloves. And one of the things I was trying to say is when you're cutting this hole, if you do use a hole saw made for wood, you can go in reverse and then go in forward, and just kind of keep doing that back and forth, and you'll get a cleaner cut, and I think a quicker cut. Now next, you're going to go around and you're just going to mark about 1 inch apart all the way around, just some marks, and I'll show you in just a sec what we're doing here. Now those are about 1 inch apart. Now what we're doing is we're going to take our tin snips now, and we're going to cut straight in. Let me get my gloves back on, because I don't want to take a chance on any cuts. This is really sharp now. All right, now we've got our gloves back on. Let's go around the paint can, cutting into that line. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I'll show you in just a second why we're doing this. Okay, so we've cut all the way around. Like I said, I'm a little bit off center. That's okay. I wished it was a little bit more centered to the right, but it's all right. We're going to take these and push these down with our leather gloves on, because if you're doing this barehanded, you would regret it very quickly. So remember, we've cut almost right up to the edge of the mark we made earlier. And now we're just pushing these in all the way around the edges for our wood gasification stove, secondary burn stove. And just go all the way around like that. Almost got it. All right, so you can see we've turned in there all the way around. We're very close to the size of this. It's okay if this is actually a little bit larger because we're going to take our lid back off. I'm going to show you how to permanently attach this, but there's a couple of things we need to do to the inner can. Now, one thing I want to say about using these cans and these cans, they can put off some toxic gases, so you have to be very careful. Make sure you put this somewhere where there is ventilation. After your first or second burn, it's going to put off less, especially in these type of cans produced for food, because a lot of times they can have plastic or waxy substances in there. So after a couple of good burns, maybe 2 hours of burning, that should burn away. But again, it will smell the first time you use it. So remember, use it outside the first time, and then make sure it's sitting on the top of a stove, it's in an unused fireplace next to a windowsill that's slightly cracked. So you just want to make sure that any toxic vapors are getting outside and you have good ventilation. So the next thing we're using is we're going to create some holes in our large outer can at the very base. And what we're using is the step drill bit set. I'll put a link to that as well, but these are really nice and they cut through metal really well. But what we want to do is we want to take a tape measure, a seamstress tape measure, and we're going to make it about every 1.5 inches all the way around the base of the can. Try not to make it right where the can is put together here, because it may weaken the structure of the can. So just come off about right there and start making marks about every 1.5 inches. All right, so we've went all the way around the base of our can. We've measured out our points that we're going to put a 3/4 hole every 1.5 inches. We're going to use the step drill bit and try to carefully do this without, this is really thin metal, so it can warp and bend pretty easy, but I think this type of drill bit is your best bet, is to use these. Let's get our gloves back on and we'll create all of those holes. Now, as I said before, this metal is really thin, so you just have to kind of take your time with it. Don't try to put too much force on it, because you can bend these paint cans pretty easy. We're going to go all the way around, creating these about a little bit bigger than half, close to 3/4 inch holes. Now you can take one of these Dremel tools and go around the edges of this metal and kind of soften it up a bit, because someone could touch that. So it's just probably a good idea to just take some time and do that. For time purposes today, I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to recommend doing that on these type of cans. Paint cans have very thin metal, and actually I think the optimum metal to do this would be one of the industrial size, the kind of the institutional size food cans like this. This is just a normal size food can, but the ones you see at the grocery store that are for large kitchens and things like that, it would probably work better, because this metal is very thin. You can see right there, it's like a thin aluminum. So just remember that if you want to do this permanently and have a little bit better results, I think one of those industrial food cans would work better. But the only issue there is you don't have the top, so you'll have to do some creative work to create your own top. So that's why we've opted for the paint can, is because this already has the top with it, and that's an important component of this setup. Now the next step is we're going to have to remove our lid here, take it back off because it is hammered on. So I'm just going to carefully go around there, just like we're opening a fresh can of paint. I know I'm out of camera there. I'll try to get it back to the other side. You can see what I'm doing there. But just open back your can. If you have a paint key, that can work just as well, or a flathead screwdriver. Open it back up. Clean out the inside of this can. You're probably going to have a lot of metal shavings. Remove the top that we cut out and just go around. Yeah, you've got some metal shavings in there, so make sure you dump this out before you go to use it. Now in our interior can, we want to create the same 3/4 type holes, spaced about 2 inches apart. So we're going to come back in with our marker and our seamstress tape, and we're going to mark every 2 inches a dot where exactly where we want to drill a hole. And it's a lot easier doing this with this type of tape measure because it's not flopping around. So let's do every 2 inches. So there's only going to be a few holes in the bottom, and we're going to need another set of holes on here, and I'll show you just a sec how we're going to do that. Remember, try not to cut into this seam because it could compromise the strength of the can or the structural integrity. So we're too close there, so I'm going to leave one area here where we don't have a hole. Now this can has a lot of sharp metal edges, a lot of metal that could easily cut somebody. But once this is installed, the inside of the large can and this can is going to be pretty okay. We're not going to disassemble this for any reason, so we're going to keep it attached. That's why I'm recommending only cleaning up these 3/4 holes right now around your larger paint can, because this will be safely inside of our larger can. Now at the top of this can, we don't want to drill too close because we're attaching our paint can lid to this, and I'll show you how to do that. And there's two different ways you can do it, but I'm going to go with probably what's easiest for me. But we're going to create some much smaller holes right here, that's about 3/4 to about 1 inch down. So we just want to kind of stay away from the top and go around the top, and creating these holes are going to be much smaller but much closer together, maybe 1/4 of an inch. Now we've created these 1/4 inch holes all the way around, I'd say about 3/4 to maybe close to an inch from the top of our can. And the last set of holes we're doing to encourage this gasification event and this secondary burn is we're going to drill some holes on the bottom. Same thing, it doesn't have to be a lot, but just kind of go around the perimeter. So these are not perfectly measured on the bottom, but we just want to have a lot of air intake coming once we get our burn going. So now we're going to take the top of our paint can, and if you remember, we've created these little slots. I'll try to show you that all the way around. Just again, make sure you're wearing a very heavy-duty pair of gloves. And we're going to kind of bend them in there because we have a reason for doing this. We're going to kind of straighten them out a little bit, go all the way around, and I'm going to show you how to permanently attach this paint can lid to our secondary burn chamber, or our primary burn chamber. A little bit tricky there, but we're just going to bend these out to where our paint can lid sits right at the top of our interior can. So again, you have to kind of do a little bit of back and forth with it and get it just right. Now with a little bit of back and forth, I finally got this attached, and again, with a really thick pair of leather gloves like this, I don't have to worry about it puncturing them. These are the brand that I like to use. I'll put a link in the description. These things are really great in preventing you from getting cut when you're handling stuff like this. But again, we're attaching that to the base of it, but I'm going to show you how to permanently attach it, and there's two different methods you can use. You can either use a pipe clamp like this, put it on, tighten it down, and it'll be there for a long time. Stainless steel, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. Somebody will correct me in the comments if that's not true. You can use that pipe clamp, or I'm 100% sure these are stainless steel zip ties, and you just put them around that like that. I've got some that are slightly longer, but once we do that, it'll be permanently attached. Tighten it up. So again, there's two possible methods we can use there, is either the stainless steel zip ties or the pipe clamp. So before I put that on, I'm just going to make sure those are flush with the can. Make sure our can is not sticking up too high. It's okay if it's sticking out just a little bit. You can kind of see there's a little bit of coming out of the can, but anyways, it's going to stay in there just fine. Just put it as close to the top as you can before you reattach it to your main primary burn chamber. Now we need to reattach our paint can lid back to the paint can, and you can either use a rubber mallet or something like this, a piece of wood where you can hit it on the top, go around it, and try not to dent it too much. These cans are really thin metal, so they dent very easily, so I'd recommend using something like this where you can hit it with your hand and it's pretty stable, kind of spreads out the force instead of just like punching into it where you'll make quite a dent. Now the technical term, I suppose, for this type of burning stove is a wood downdraft gasification stove, and you're not just limited to wood. You can use other products as well, and I'll show you that in just a second, that you could safely use indoor. If you're using wood, obviously you want to burn that outdoors, but it's going to create the same effect in either item we're using. One is very safe and one is not so safe. So again, the wood, that's an outdoor idea, but if you're using this indoors, you would want to put it on the stove top where you could vent it out. And also, this bottom can get really hot. So a couple of ideas I had: you can add bolts to the bottom of this, attach them like that, put them through before you start building it, and then add a nut to your bolt so it's actually elevated off of whatever you have. I've got a piece of tile that I'm going to demonstrate this in the greenhouse, and I don't have to worry about damaging my wood table. You could also use something like this, some of these L brackets. You could attach that to the side elevate it up just a little bit and just have it up off of the surface you're using. And there may be a little bit of heat transfer to these L brackets, but I think minimal, I believe. But anyways, let's take a look at this in the safe indoor method, and then we'll take it outdoor and see if we can create some of that secondary burn. If I can film it, the sun's going down, so maybe I can catch it on film. But again, the first thing we're using is going to be sterno. Perfectly safe indoors. If you've ever been to a buffet, they use these all night long on buffets to keep the food warm. Remove the cap, drop it down in. You can use different size depending on how long you want it to burn for. Some of these, like this one right here, is a 2¼ hour burn time, and of course this small one's going to burn less. And I think I have some around the greenhouse that have a 3 to 6 hour burn. I'll have to see if I can dig one of those up. But anyways, I just wanted to demonstrate this in this small before we take it outside and show you the wood gasification method. So let's try this first, and then we'll go outside after the sun sets, and you might be able to see some of the secondary burn happening if I can get the camera angle just right. It's a little hard to film it, but I'll try my best. Now let me demonstrate the sterno method first. We're just going to open the sterno, and I'd created a video a while back where everyone asked me, how do you put it out? How do you put it out? Well, I had created, it looks like a giant candle, and you just basically can blow it out. But in the case of this sterno, you can drop a lid from a jar down in there, you can let it burn itself out, or you can blow it out like a candle. Just remember, you don't want to pick this up when it's hot and you stick your hand down in there. You're going to burn the tips of every finger, probably as well as the palm of your hand. So just remember, once it's in there, you want it to put it out and let it cool back off before you try to remove it out of your gasification stove. All right, so we've got our gel stove here, and I think this even gives you a warning on the side when this turns colors, this indicator. I think it becomes white. It's blue, it's safe to touch, but when it becomes white, it means it is white hot. So let's drop it down into our stove. Landed perfectly. Let me just see if you can see it there. It's inside of our gasification stove. Let's light it up with our torch lighter, but if you have a grill light or something long match, you don't want to stick your hand down in there. So if you got a short match, you may want to find something like this that's a little bit better. And everything I'm using today, I'm going to put in the link in the description. Now, if you've used sterno before, you know usually the flame on it is pretty small, but I think because of the air intake, we're getting a larger flame and more heat coming out fast. Now again, remember, the first time you use this, you want to do it outside for at least an hour to 2 hours to burn off any of the materials that they've sprayed on the inside of this can, which can be plastic or things like kind of a waxy-like substance. You've probably noticed it before when you opened a can. It's probably what misflavors a lot of canned foods. But anyways, this is the method you use. And again, if you want to put it out, you can either try blowing it out. Safer method is just drop the lid of a jar and let it cool down before you try to remove it. Now, as you notice, the flame is really jumping out high out of this, and I believe it's because of the air intake and the gasification effect. So it actually burns a lot higher, and I believe hotter, and it may burn out quicker than 2 hours because of this effect. But anyways, what I'm going to do is put this out, let it cool down, and then we're going to show a wood burning effect and try to get that secondary burn video on video so you can see exactly how it's working. So anyways, we're going to drop this right in the center of the can and allow it to put out the flame. Perfect, and it'll just take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to cool down where I can pick it up. And if you want to take it out quicker, take a pair of pliers or something, needle nose, something like that, channel locks, where you don't physically touch it with your hand. You could do it with your gloves, but even then you might feel a little bit of heat if it's really gotten hot. Now, while I was outside allowing this to cool down, I forgot I had not shown you one of my ideas to create this into a heater that you could use indoors with the sterno. So I'm going to carefully remove this. This is a stainless steel mesh that I've used many times on different projects, and this is just an ordinary food can. I believe it had chicken in it, a little bit larger than a standard tuna can. We're going to relight, and I'm going to show you how you can turn this into a stove that expels a little bit more heat, kind of like a radiant heater there. So let's relight. Make sure we're lit there. Quickly get this on top because I've got bare hands right now. And just kind of put that in there and allow it to heat up. Get it nice and firm so it won't fall over. And so this will capture a little bit more heat and radiate it into the room. So if you want to also have this as a radiant heater, This will heat up, and this will capture a little bit more heat on the top and act as a heater. Now I'm going to go outside and collect some more sticks so I can show you the secondary burn gasification event that I'm hoping will take place when we burn the wood sticks. All right, so we're going to load our gas stove, our secondary burn combustion chamber, up with some just small pine twigs. You don't need anything super big, especially for creating a small cooking environment. Now, one of the things you're going to need to do if you do want to cook on this is you're going to need to create an elevated platform. Same thing I demonstrated earlier about using some type of bolt, nut, self-tapping screws. You're going to want to create 4 of these to put your pot on. So just remember that you'll need it elevated, or you might possibly smother the flame. You need to have a little bit of oxygen coming out so it can burn at its optimum best. All right, so there's very little light out here, but we're outside the greenhouse where you can kind of get an idea of that secondary burn. It's a little bit hard to film because your air intakes are at the base and you have that air swirling inside, but let's go ahead and light it and see if we can show it a little bit around the sides. So it's a little bit harder to see, but there is an air intake happening, and a little bit of that effect is really starting to fuel the fire with the extra oxygen and the secondary burn. So it really burns well. You could cook on it, you could heat, you could have a small campfire on a patio, you could use it outdoors with the wood. Remember, you can't do this indoors because you have far too much CO2 being produced, or carbon monoxide. So you just want to make sure that inside you use the safe sterno method, and outdoors for a small campfire you could just have this in your camping equipment, and it'd be a great way to have a little campfire, and you don't have to worry about lugging around a lot of wood because this puts off a good bit of heat and you could cook on it. So guys, these wood gasification stoves are simple to use, and it's easy to store in your camping gear or as an emergency item you need during a power outage or whatever use. Remember, I always say this, and I hope I said it at the beginning of the video, but if I didn't, always use proper safety equipment. If you're going to use the sterno cans, you still need to have proper ventilation. You need to have all the safety equipment, carbon monoxide detector, smoke detector, and a fire extinguisher, because anytime you're dealing with open flame, there's always a chance that something could go wrong. So remember, you just want to have that safety equipment on hand and ready to go if something does happen. These are super simple to build, and I hope you'll try it. Keep it in your camping gear or store it in a pantry, and you can use it in a power outage. And as you saw outside, you can even have a little campfire with it and cook outdoors. So it's a nice little emergency grill if you don't have a full-size one on your camping trip. So guys, I really appreciate you watching. If you have any questions about this video or any previous video, please become a public subscriber first, because I always try to answer public subscribers first because they've done me the great favor of becoming a subscriber, and I'll try to get back to you as quick as possible. In some videos I've gotten thousands of comments and questions. It's really hard to answer all of those in a timely manner, so please do become a public subscriber. And even if you don't want to become a subscriber, just a thumbs up would make a huge difference to me, because it tells me kind of where the direction of the channel should go, and I really appreciate that. So guys, have a great day.